want to do a quick shout out to the studio that we're recording in, which is Metro Podcast in New York City. So head to the show notes if you want to find out more or book your own space here. So before I introduce Alex, my guest for today, to the show, I want to talk really briefly about what intrigued me so much about his story in particular. So just some basic background. Back when I was younger, I kind of cold pitched modeling agent. I think I was maybe like 14 or 15, and signed with an agency when I was in high school. And for about a year, was signed with her. And I mean, I adore her. I mean, we don't talk anymore, but the whole experience taught me so much. And in particular, at the time, there was a lot of a different model behind the modeling agency. This is pre-TikTok. It also definitely, I would say, fast-tracked an eating disorder that I had, which was due to the fact that I, within the year of being signed, went from really just being kind of a young teen girl and then really becoming a woman and got hips and boobs and everything. And so I very fast realized that the modeling industry was not for me, but luckily I decided to pursue entrepreneurship regardless. And so I'm really intrigued by how the industry has not only shifted, but how people like yourself with social media have also been able to elevate stories surrounding body image and really helping people feel confident. Mm-hmm. So Alex, you are the CEO, founder, and chief hot fat guy of the Hot Fat Guy Club.
Yep.
Now, I did a tweet about Andrew Huberman, that Alex replied to, and simultaneously I was on TikTok and his logo came up. So I literally saw his video and then I got a response on Twitter to this tweet, and I was like, wait, isn't this the same logo? And so I DM'd him and was like, I'm literally on your video right now. Will you come on my podcast? And so you were a side model pre this TikTok that blew up.
Yep.
So let's start there.
Great.
So I want to talk, this TikTok you had, walk me through what exactly happened, because this really catapulted your kind of presence on social.
So I've been a big and tall model since 2016, when kind of the body positivity movement for men originally kicked off and became a larger part of the conversation. Zach Miko was signed by IMG Models to kick off their Brawn division. And Zach is a very dear friend of mine. He was technically like the first big and tall male model. Simultaneously, while that was happening, I'm a professional opera singer. I have been singing opera since 2009. In 2015, I had been using the same headshot since I was 17 years old. And between then, I hit puberty, was able to grow a beard, looked like an adult human being, and did a photo shoot with my friend Jiang Chen, which completely turned my life upside down because it was the first time I had ever been able to perceive myself as a hot person. And when I did that shoot, the whole time Jiang was like, you're so good on camera, you're so good at this, you should get into modeling, And I was like, there's no fucking way anyone wants to hire me to be a model. And then 3 months later, I see in Cosmo or GQ or something, IMG doing this whole article about how IMG signed Zach Miko, and that like male body diversity, male body positivity, and like fat male models are now a thing. So I was like, oh, this is a real thing that I actually kind of want to do, because this is a lot more fun than being an opera singer, quite frankly. And when I originally went into the opera field, I was expecting that opera, which is of course stereotypically linked to fat people, it's not over till the fat lady sings. The most famous opera singer ever is Luciano Pavarotti, who is a hot fat guy. And every single coach, conductor, teacher, director I ever worked with told me, lose 150 pounds and then maybe you can have a career. So there was no correlation between my talent, my skill, my ability. It all had to do with what I looked like. And so ironically enough, the fashion and modeling industry was more accepting of my fat ass than the opera industry, which of course is far more stereotypically linked to larger people. And so I started modeling in 2016. I got signed. I applied to like every agency under the sun, including modeling agencies that didn't currently have a board for big and tall men. And there was an agency in London called Bridge Models that was my first agency that I sent the application to, couple weeks go by and I woke up in the middle of the night and like checked my email randomly. I don't know. I just like had a feeling. It was like 3:00 in the morning. My phone's next to me and I look at my email and I see a thing from Bridge Models saying like, oh, we love you. We want to sign you. But I thought it was a dream. So the next morning I wake up, taking my morning shit, and I'm literally caught like Hank Schrader in Breaking Bad when he figures out that Walt is Heisenberg with my pants down, like, oh my God, that was fucking real. And I'm like freaking out, like, holy shit, I couldn't fucking imagine that this would ever be something that was possible for me. They signed me, and then I got signed in New York maybe a month and a half later. Worked for Target a couple months after that, and then, you know, it's been inconsistent, but like really cool jobs with really cool brands came in. Since then, I've worked with Target, Lululemon, Ralph Lauren, Izod, Polo Ralph Lauren, who else? Macy's, JCPenney, Kohls, and a bunch of other like random smaller brands that no one else would have heard of too. So something that if I would have told 14-year-old me that not only would you be, you know, a model whose image is in every single Target in the United States right now, but you would have also done all of these other things, I would have said, yeah, fucking right. No way.
It's fearless.
Yeah.
So were you a full-time opera singer before the modeling? Is that how you're paying your bills?
No, opera, unless you're headlining at major opera companies, opera's not paying your bills, quite frankly. The opera industry has done a really good job of perfecting the internship scam for young artists to the point where we are paying application fees to even apply to jobs that, like, if we're lucky, pay us $500 a week. So it's absurd. So you either need a rich husband, rich parents, benefactors, or a lot of side jobs to be able to sustain an opera career.
So what were you doing pre this to make a living?
I was working. I had a sales job. I was teaching. I taught chess to preschoolers for almost 7 years, which was something. The clientele for that, especially in New York City, is like the 1% of the 1%. So like if you can name an American legacy family, I've taught their kids. Yeah, there's a lot of stories there.
I'm intrigued. I'm like, what is the pay for a rich kid who wants to know chess?
The pay was good. I mean, the pay was good. I was also really good at it because I am basically an adult-sized 4-year-old. So I was very good at. I've always been good at taking really complicated concepts and making them simple for anyone, whether it's a 3-year-old who still shits their pants, or it's, you know, a 47-year-old adult male who's never gotten a compliment in their lives and is only now starting to try to do the work of parsing out what that voice in their head is that's telling them that they're a worthless piece of shit and that they're undeserving of love and they are never going to be able to have the life they want because of the way that they look like. You know, which of course none of those things are true, but I like making complicated things simple to understand. So let's just say that they paid a premium for that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
I don't give rich people discounts.
I'm obsessed with you.
Yeah.
Okay, but you grew up in the Bay, right? Which is also very different than New York and LA when it comes to fashion and modeling. Yeah. So, I mean, can you explain that? What is the difference in your mind?
So the biggest difference between New York City and the entire rest of the United States, most specifically Los Angeles, is cars and traffic. New Yorkers are a lot better at embracing the collective suck than in my opinion, everyone else in the country. Yeah. And the biggest difference between New York and Los Angeles is, you know, when you're stuck on the train and you're like, specifically between 50th and 59th Street, there's this 90-degree turn where the train will go at about a 45-degree angle while it's going around the turn. And I have gotten stuck in that turn so many times. And there was one time I was stuck there for about 3 hours. There was a blackout, and for whatever reason, the trains all just like shut down, and I got stuck there for 3 hours. And when you're stuck on the train for however much amount of time, it doesn't matter if you are homeless or a billionaire. All of us are exactly the same in that moment. We are all experiencing that moment together. Whereas when you are in Los Angeles or Oklahoma City or Seattle or, you know, Charlotte, North Carolina, when you're in your car by yourself, everyone is your enemy. There is no, like, you're not going to let that guy cut you off and go in front of you when you're trying to merge into the lane. It's like, no, fuck you. I'm going. Whereas when you're stuck underground on the subway, there is a certain level of community in that, like, well, this sucks for all of us.
I agree.
Yeah. And growing up in San Francisco, this was before the tech industry ruined San Francisco, and people still dressed well. And it wasn't just, jeans that your mommy bought you in middle school and your startup t-shirt that hasn't been washed in a month. And my mother owned an events company, and if I remember correctly, every single one of the men that worked for her was gay. So they were all very stylish and they all dressed incredibly well. Okay. And that was a major style influence for me growing up. And in fact, one of her employees' husbands, granted this was before gay marriage was legal, but he ran the youth theater program that I grew up doing, and was maybe one of the most stylish people I'd ever met in my entire life. So also growing up doing theater, being around theater people, I was like, oh, I have to dress a certain way. And I would go to, my dad was a native New Yorker, and he wore the same thing every single day, but we would go to New York for like a month every summer growing up, and coming to New York City and just seeing what, how people dressed, how the way people carry themselves, the way people wanted to be perceived when I came to New York was also a really big influence on me. And what was unfortunate was that, like, being a fat kid in the 90s and early 2000s, it was nearly impossible to find any clothes that fit me. So I got really good at thrifting, and Target was essentially the only place that I could shop at that had anything that was even remotely close to fitting me. So it was very difficult being able to put a wardrobe together of being able to look and dress how I actually wanted to, versus what was actually like available and had the utility of being able to be worn every day.
Were you bullied growing up?
Oh yeah.
What was that like in SF?
Kids are horrible.
They are. I was bullied too.
Yeah, kids are horrible. I think that I feel like there is some kind of direct correlation between like the coolest adults and the ones who were bullied the most when they were kids, because one, you've been treated so horribly by so many people for so much of your life that you do not ever want anyone else to feel like that, and you want to be that person in the room that people can come to, feel safe with, feel welcome with, things like that. In 2016, I lost a lot of weight, primarily because I went through a really shitty breakup, and
Oh, I know that.
Oh, yeah. And the thing that was most fascinating throughout that process was realizing that when you look in the mirror and you see all of your perceived flaws, you see them more than anyone. And when you're looking at that, like when I was in middle school, I would always like stand in the bathroom in my mother's house wanting to cut my tits off because, I had man boobs when I was 13 years old. And it was something that all of the bullies in my school would always give me so much shit for. And, now looking back on that as a 32-year-old adult, I realized it was just them projecting their own insecurities because, like, quite frankly, they were fucking stupid and that was the best they had. When you're an adult and anyone has the audacity to make fun of you for anything that's not in, like, you don't have like the basis of friendship to talk shit to each other, it is them projecting their own insecurities onto you because they see one of their own perceived flaws that you have as well, but you're not super self-conscious about it and you're not letting it dictate the way that you feel about yourself. And that always ignites, the fire of like, oh shit, I have to make them feel smaller. And we're all insecure. Every single one of us is insecure. Every single person you know is insecure about something, you know, and at the end of the day, the only person who exists with those flaws 100% of the time is you. You magnify them to yourself. Other people don't give a shit. And the people that want to say something to you about it, want to give you shit about it, are doing you a favor, telling you that I'm a shitty person, stay away from me. I'm not worth your time, your energy, your love. You know, I'm telling you who I am. I'm waving a big giant red flag saying stay away from me. And I just talked for a very long time.
Well, I'm curious what you said about looking in the mirror and wanting to quote unquote cut your boobs off when you were younger. Was any of that giving you anxiety, depression as a young person?
Yeah, there was a very limited vision of what being what being a man and what being attractive as a man looked like. And you know, you go into a bookstore and you go into the magazine section and you look at GQ, Men's Health, Men's Fitness, and like every publication, you know, People's Sexiest Man of the Year. And it's always, if it's not George Clooney, it's, you know, Chris Hemsworth with 8 million abs or some bullshit like that. And it's like, oh, if you're fat, you better be hilarious or rich. And there is no in between. No one's going to be interested in you. No one's going to want to have anything to do with you if you're not any of those things. And when you grow up, you realize that that's not true. But when you're 16 and you don't have any other context for the world, and that's what everything everywhere is telling you, whether it's a magazine or a TV show or your football coach or, you know, your dad or your neighbor or the girls in your high school that don't know any better, or the guys on your football team or anything like that, like, it's hard to believe anything differently. And there is so much pressure to fit into that binary and to like literally fit in. You know, you go into every clothing store, there's nothing for you. The whole world is basically kind of telling you that you don't have a place if you're fat. You're too big. You take up too much space, so there is no space for you. And that was something that was always really difficult because, you know, I was fat from the moment I came out of the womb. You know, my dad was 5'4" and a twig. My mom is like 5'2" and a twig. And I'm 6 feet tall and 300 pounds. I'm like,
so weird. Were you genetically made?
Maybe. I'm such a fucking outlier.
How were you, if they're so tiny?
I think I was like a 14-pound baby.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was always bigger. I was always different. And, you know, it wasn't like I was, sitting at home eating a dozen donuts for breakfast every morning. Like, this was just the default for my body from even when I was a kid. And so all of these people would weaponize my own body against me. And you know, they assume all of these things about you purely because you're fat. You're automatically less intelligent. You're automatically less talented. You're less worthy. This is a funny story. I was working in the Hamptons in 2021. Fuck the Hamptons. And I was teaching chess out in the Hamptons, and I was living in a house with a bunch of other tutors for the company that I worked with. And there was this one guy who thought he was God's gift to women. And I went on a date one night with this woman, and I planned this awesome fucking date. We were going to sit at this one beach in Montauk, watch the sunset. I brought a bottle of wine, rolled us a couple of joints. It was my night to make dinner for the house, so I had grilled like a bunch of steaks and did like a charred Caesar salad and all this shit, and brought little bites from that. And we show up at the beach, and you know, I'm not a catfish. All my social media was directly linked to all of my dating app accounts and everything like that. And like, I'm a very easy person to find on the internet. And in fact, all of my dimensions are on multiple websites too. And I will never forget this. I get out of the car, we meet in the parking lot, and this woman looks me up and down. She's like, can I be really honest? I was like, yeah, of course. I vastly prefer that. And she was like, I thought you were taller and you're really fat, and I'm just like really in a physical place right now, and I'm not into it, so I'm gonna go home. And I was like, cool, okay, great. Because the only thing you can say in that moment is, okay. So we get back in our car, we drive away. I was pissed because the only place in the world that would ever happen is the fucking Hamptons.
Well, what was this woman? What did she look like?
Tall, skinny. Like, she was pretty, but I'm sorry, but like, you gotta look like Marissa Tomei to say some shit like that. Like, fuck you. But no, horrifically ugly personality. And I got in the car. I'm polyamorous, so I called my partner and like told her that this had happened, and we were both appalled. And I get back to the house, and I'm like sitting by the pool, just trying to like this, because this just tapped directly into my like middle school insecurity of you're too fat to play with us, right? And I am pissed and sad and all of these things, and this guy comes up to me to check on me, which I will give him credit for wanting to make sure I was okay. But then it came down to like, well, isn't it a lifestyle choice? Like, don't you choose to be fat? Like, fucking no.
This is like back to back.
Yeah, like fucking no, I don't. Like, I literally, when we're done recording here, I'm going to a 2-hour boxing class after this. So like, I go to boxing 5 days a week for 2 hours a day. And like, I exercise like crazy. I eat really well. This is the default for my body. And your weight fluctuates constantly. Like, you can gain or lose up to 10 pounds in a day, whether it's water weight or this or that. But like, the fact of the matter is I'm a bigger person. I am always going to be a bigger person. And the only way I've ever been able to lose significant amounts of weight in my life is by doing really unhealthy things to be able to do it. And, no matter how much weight I lose, I'm still going to be bigger than most other people. I'm still going to have man boobs. I'm still going to have giant calves. I'm still going to have a fat ass, a Hank Hill version of a fat ass, but a fat ass nonetheless. And I'm never going to have, a Chris Hemsworth type physique. I can't afford the steroids that I would need to do it anyway. Mm-hmm. So, there is so much pressure, and most of that pressure comes from other men to have that overly muscular, superhero, idealized body type, when in reality, most regular people don't actually give a shit how ripped you are. And it's just very frustrating that idea, especially now, like, thank God I didn't exist as a middle or high schooler with this version of the internet and this version of the manosphere on the internet, where you've got people like Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, and I don't necessarily want to lump Andrew Huberman in that because he's a couple levels above those terrible people, but like where it's like, this is the only way to be a man. You have to have 8 million abs, $8 million, and 8 Bugattis. Like, no,
specific.
It's so stupid. Yeah. And I am walking, living, breathing proof, and I have a ton of other friends that like, you can be fat and have man boobs and have giant ankles and have horrible body image, but fake confidence, become a model, get signed all over the world, and have endless amounts of people throwing themselves at you, being incredibly attracted to you, and challenging your own perception of like, in high school, my own self-perception of myself, when I looked at the mirror, I saw Jabba the Hutt mixed with Peter Griffin with no bones and Gumby melted on the sidewalk in Arizona in August. Mix all those together, and that's what I saw when I looked in the mirror. And that wasn't true. Mm-hmm. And we're so terrible to ourselves, and like, it's amazing how easy it is for most of us to be our own worst enemy. And like, I say things to myself on a regular basis that I wouldn't dare say to anyone else in my life, a stranger or the people I care about. And we're so well trained to treat ourselves like shit, purely based off of what other people have told us. And the fact of the matter is most of those other people have said that to you in order to alleviate their own feelings of insecurity and make themselves feel better. So
you use the word fat, which is what really intrigued me about your message. It reminds me of, I remember right there, Carly Kloss. Mm-hmm. And then I think she did a campaign maybe when I was in high school with Ashley Graham. And I remember my first mindset, and I was in high school, and I've always really struggled with body image. My sister was a very successful model. She's also very, very thin and, does it in ways that I wouldn't necessarily say anyone should particularly do. That being said, I remember seeing this interview with Ashley Graham, and I think someone asked her, why are you fat or overweight or whatever? And she said something you said, like, I go to the gym every single day. Like, I work out, I eat really healthy. Like, this is the way that I'm made. And I remember thinking then, like, maybe I guess that's true. I have no idea, right? And now I do agree with that.
Yep.
But that word in particular, fat, like, if I were to go around, and I'm very sensitive when I never say that word because I don't want to offend everyone, but you're allowed to kind of say it. So what does that word mean to you? And I mean, when you see that online or when people talk about it, I mean, why have you been able to almost make it a socially acceptable word when there's such a negative
it's an adjective.
connotation?
It describes the literal state of my body. Yes, I am fat. Congratulations, you have fucking eyes. Like, you can't, if you really want to say something to hurt me, there's a lot more things that you could say that are actually hurtful versus describing the state of my body. Like, I don't want to say that there's nothing that I could do to change it. There are plenty of things that I could do to change it, but I can't do it in the immediate moment. It's going to take time, right? And I want to take the ability for people to weaponize the literal state of someone's body away from them. Because, like, if there's anything that the whole weight loss drug discourse has taught us, that it's not a personal failure, it's not a moral failure, it's not an ethical failure that you are a fat person. Some people are just born being fat. Everyone's metabolism is different. Some people get to win the genetic lottery. Other people don't. And, it could come down to something like insulin resistance, or, if you're an impoverished person and you don't have access to good food there's so many different reasons why a person could be fat or not be fat. It's not something that we should be weaponizing against people, number one. And number two, it is purely a descriptor of the state of my body. That's it. It's a meat sack. This is a meat sack to transport my brain from one place to another. That's all it is. It does not dictate how good of a person I am. It doesn't dictate how good of a lover I am, how good of a friend I am, how good of a singer, how good of a model, any of those things. It is just bones, muscle, and meat. That's it. And one of the things I do every day, I kind of retired from singing for a while. I'm getting back into singing now. And I go live on TikTok every day and practice, and I always do it shirtless. And there's inevitably people on there that are like, oh, put a shirt on, oh, fat ass, disgusting, this, that. And I'm like, cool, thank you so much for driving my engagement up. Really, really appreciate it. You have eyes, congratulations. And not everyone can, you look at, Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth in any one of the Marvel movies, right? They're starving themselves in advance of when they're going to be shirtless on screen. Do you watch Reacher?
No.
Alan Ritchson, the guy that plays Reacher, I love him. He's amazing. He's fucking huge, and he has been on the cover of Men's Health a couple of times recently, and I really appreciate how candid he has been about the process to build as much muscle as he needed to be able to play that character and be on that show. And he was like, it is horribly unsustainable. It was terribly unhealthy. I broke like multiple bones doing it. I tore multiple muscles, and I eat, nothing that tastes good, and I'm basically miserable the whole time. But, he's getting paid a shit ton of money from MGM and Amazon Studios to do that, and that's great, but it is unrealistic to think that a regular person can maintain that lifestyle, that physique. So, I'm fat. I've been fat my entire life. There's anyone on the street can call me fat. People that I'm sure every fat person has experienced this at least once in their life, the drive-by fat ass, where someone drives by and they just go, hey, fat ass.
Someone called me fat ass one time in a bar in Nashville.
Yeah, it happens.
Punched her.
Yeah, because people are dicks.
Yeah.
So if we take away the power, if we just make that a regular word and continue to make it even more of a descripting term than it already is, it takes the power away from people to be able to say that to us and make us feel shitty about themselves for what is literally just the state of our body. It's as simple as that.
Would you say, though, there's a difference between someone who is like morbidly obese, which I don't put you in any capacity near that category, who is like actually potentially at risk to die, in comparison to someone like you?
I mean, I've been there. I was over 400 pounds for a long time, and I think it is anything in life can be changed with a series of little decisions made constantly over a long period of time. But what it really comes down to is, why are you making those decisions? If you're facing legitimate health issues, that is a conversation for you, your doctor, and your closest family members that you actually trust to have that legitimate conversation with you, not some stranger that you meet at a bar, not some person that you meet at the gym, that is a super intimate, important life decision that needs to be made. And one thing that I try really hard to never do is prescribe a way to live outside of how to feel about yourself. I'm not here to tell anyone to lose weight. I'm not here to tell anyone to gain weight. I am just here to offer tools to not be your own worst enemy and to not hate yourself. Excuse me. So what I do appreciate, though, is now that conversation can shift a little bit, where if you do know someone, for example, if there's someone who is 600 pounds that is pre-diabetes or is facing any myriad of health issues, now there is a legitimate tool for them to be able to get to a certain weight if they need to address those health issues. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm not on weight loss drugs. I don't intend to use them now. If that was available to me when I was 14 years old, I would have been the first fucking person in line for it. Please, yes, finally there is a legitimate FDA approved real drug that can actually solve the problem and also takes the moral, personal, and ethical, quote unquote failure. It's not a failure, but dilemma out of weight loss and not make someone feel like it is their personal failure. And it also, I would hope that it would help take some of the fear that fat people have away of going to the doctor and dealing with anyone in the medical profession, where the doctors will start to be a little bit more compassionate to fat people's medical issues, because it does not just come down to our weight all the time. And if someone, let's say, does need to lose a significant amount of weight in a shorter period of time, or for whatever reason, they can start taking Wegovy, Mounjaro, Ozempic, any one of those things, and make the lifestyle choices that are also necessary from that, but have a lot more assistance to do that, other than developing an eating disorder or starving themselves or overtraining or any one of the things. And if you also don't have the financial resources available to do that, there's a real legitimate tool now.
So you're pro Ozempic?
I wouldn't necessarily. Sure, yeah. I think that if it's something that you want to do for yourself and you're doing it because you have a real reason to do it and you don't feel pressure from the outside world to do it, great. It's a hell of a lot better than all of the other bullshit, Hydroxycut or I really need to Google the name of the cortisol one that would always advertise on Comedy Central at night. Do you remember the one I'm talking about?
Yes, but I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah, all of the bullshit weight loss drugs that were probably just sugar pills that they would sell to us for a ton of money, and at least now, diet culture and the billions of dollars that are there to be made off of people hating themselves and feeling bad about their bodies and the way they look like and all of that, yes, is a major issue. But also now there is a really legitimate tool that we can actually see fucking works. Yeah. It's still early on. We don't know all of the side effects. We don't know all of the potential issues, but it clearly works. And also, skinny people, stop fucking taking Ozempic. You don't fucking need it.
That's what I was going to ask
you. You don't fucking need it, Kim Kardashian.
Do you think she takes it?
Oh God, of course she
Why?
Fucking takes it.
How do you know?
Because the photo of her breaking the internet, all of a sudden now she looks like she's been on heroin for the last 3 years. You don't get that skinny that quickly unless you're the majority of celebrities, I think, not the majority, but there are a lot of celebrities that are taking weight loss drugs. And are setting a bad precedent for it. This is just my own personal feeling of if you're a fat positive content creator who starts taking weight loss drugs and are not transparent about using it, no, don't include that. But I think that it is not okay for influencers to be peddling weight loss drugs because, one, you're not a doctor, and two, it sets a bad precedent of it's just like you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I have so many thoughts, and I think so much is wrong with this influencer culture at this point. I mean, I started this back in 2011 before, TikTok and all of this was a thing. But I remember when everyone was like all of a sudden anxious and depressed. And I remember the way that people were like now are body positive, but then also have eating disorders. It was like the same in like 2015 where it was like, okay, now it's really cool to have anxiety and depression and it'll get me a bigger platform. And it's like, it's not cool. It's so inauthentic. But when you say it's also really fucking up the minds of young people.
Yeah.
And in what capacity would you say like this younger generation? I mean, think if you were growing up now 14, 15, 16, and you have access to all of this and you're seeing so much content and so much information and so much body positivity and lack of, I mean, what is this doing on a mental level to kids? Is it making the society better or worse?
I think in general, we know too much now. I don't know. By nature, I'm a very pessimistic person. And I think when you can be like scrolling through your For You page and go from a video of a bunch of like maimed children that just got bombed in Palestine to someone peddling Ozempic to
Cats
to like all of this shit, it's just like such a fucking whirlwind. And I am really glad that I am not a teenager right now. And the other issue is like when algorithms are the things that decide what content a lot of people consume. There's a lot of very clever bad actors that are able to hijack those algorithms and keep people's eyes on it. Like if you look at red pill, incel content and how that whole community has been able to evolve. And I think about this all the time in relation to, me being the awkward, shy, fat kid in high school who had not that just like beautiful cocktail of no self-confidence, no self-esteem, and no charisma yet.
Delicious.
So good. But like still wanted to, be a teenager and was attracted to women, right? Like, and you have no idea how to talk to them, because also that's a whole other conversation about like emotion socialization and gender socialization at a young age. We can get to that later. But what's really interesting to me is so much incel and alt-right red pill content is based off of catching teenage boys after they've had one bad interaction with women and convincing them that every woman on the planet is evil because one woman treated you like shit. And there is so much content on the internet about like all women are the same, they're all terrible, they're just there to manipulate you, blah 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 blah.
Same
blah,
with
blah,
men
blah.
though, no?
But that's not true. It's just you had one bad interaction with one bad person, and move on, get over it. It doesn't have to infect your entire
being.
Entire perception about 50+% of the population of the world, right? Not everyone is a bad person. Not everyone is there to hurt you. Not everyone has an ulterior motive. And people have figured out that there's a lot of money and a lot of influence to be procured from making people hate everyone, and specifically women when it comes to content for young men. And if I wouldn't have been in, like the one straight guy in theater stuff that I did growing up, I can definitely see where I could have fallen down that like incel bullshit path when I was in middle school and high school. But because I was, because I grew up in San Francisco, because I did theater, because I did all of those things, I didn't really fall into that bullshit masculine rabbit hole. Thank God. Yeah.
How did you start? Did you start Hot Fat Guy Club before the TikTok?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so this TikTok you posted was a response to, what was it? A guy going up.
It was a guy. It was this a bigger guy. I forget the name of his account, who would go up to women at like parties, raves, this or that, and he would ask them, "Would you date me if I was skinny?" And there was one video in particular. This really sweet, wonderful woman was like, "I would date you right now."
How fat was this guy?
I wouldn't even say that he was. He was well proportioned, but he's big. He's a big guy.
Like big boned.
You know, I wouldn't even go like big
Large.
guy. Yeah, large person. Bigger than me. That response was so earnest, and the majority of the responses that he posted were so earnest. Of these women were all like, "Yes, I would date you right now."
Do you think they were lying?
No, 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 because one, I every single human being is attracted to a different thing. There are certain people that like everyone in the world can generally agree is a beautiful person, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that every single person is attracted to them. And the things that we find attractive in every individual person are completely different. One of my best friends and I, a couple years ago, before we ended up meeting our partners, when we were still like very single and dating a lot, we would call each other like 10 times a day every time we met someone or had like a flirty interaction or were trying to come up with some clever text to send to somebody. And our tastes were so completely different in the people that we were attracted to. And it's, you know, hotness exists on such a spectrum. And so I think that, you know, what really makes you hot other than the meat sack is how you treat people, how you care for yourself, how you make people feel, what your energy is like when you walk into a room. And those are the things that end up building more attraction other than what that first impression is when you look at someone. And when I was in middle school and high school, I was absolutely clueless when people were attracted to me, when people were into me, because I was so up my own ass and insecure about the way that I looked and thinking that like I could only be lovable, I could only be fuckable, I could only be attractive if I looked like a superhero kind of thing. So it's more about it's not about what you look like, it's how you present yourself.
Yeah.
So
I've had a lot of girlfriends be like, "Can I set you up with this guy?" And then it's immediately followed by, "Oh, he's shorter than you." And I'm like, the guys that I have gone out with, it never goes through my mind height. I have a thing for Indian guys, both my ex-boyfriends. People find this so funny, and I'm finally coming to confidence.
No,
like,
I always think it's
thing.
funny when people are just like, "I have a thing for X." It's like, okay, great, yeah, you found your flavor.
Yeah, no, I did.
I like mint chip ice cream.
Problem
Yeah,
is,
there you go.
I don't know that they like me that because I'm still single. But no, that being said, I believe that it's all based on a vibe, and I think a lot of chicks in particular, like there's a height thing, and like a lot of my even in their 30s girlfriends, they're just like, "He's not tall enough for this or that." And I am honestly so glad, and it seems like you're perhaps in the same boat, to just like, I don't care about any of, I mean, I have to want to have sex with the guy, right?
Right.
But like the first thing I think of is like, "Oh, he's cute." Like he's cute. I've never been with someone, I would say, who's, I hate guys who have like six packs and abs. It's not my type.
Yep.
So do you feel like that being more flexible with like the kind of person you'd want to go out with, or like being more into personality, makes it easier for you to date because you're less, I don't know, specific? But I'm assuming.
It's not even so much that it's like a personality thing or not being specific. Like I have a type.
What's your type?
I like really tall women.
Okay.
Like really tall. I love looking up. And like I'm 6 feet tall, so they're hard to find. But I love the game. I love the chase.
Yeah, me too.
I am a whore. Like I am a whore. I have slept with so many people throughout the course of my life. And that is another reason how we like ended up down the Hot Fat Guy Club rabbit hole, is like I have had a lot of sex with a lot of people, and it ranges completely from the gamut of like literal Victoria's Secret models to anyone else, right? And and you know, there are so many other people that have had that same experience. It is not about what the person is, what they look like, what they do. It's about the chemistry and the interactions between them. My favorite thing in the world is when I don't drink, so I don't really go to bars a lot, but when I go out to parties or bars or this or that, and you always see like the, you know, fratty dude bros trying to like
So not my type.
be dickheads to women thinking that it works. And I love watching those interactions and then going to talk to the women that they were trying to talk to and making fun of them and watching their brains turn into scrambled eggs when I am having more success having just like personal interactions with these people. Because it really comes down to, are you funny? Are you charming? Do you have good stories? And are you safe to be around? Are you emotionally regulated? Again, like there's so much that you can get past with people that have nothing to do with what you look like if you are just charming, caring, genuine, safe to be around, and funny.
Yeah. I will and never have dated a pretty boy. And when I say pretty boy, like the Chris Hemsworth type. And I do. I mean, I see couples sometimes and it's a beautiful blonde girl and just there's that traditional handsome guy. Just because I date Indian guys doesn't mean that I don't look at a guy and I'm like, God, sure, if that guy came into my life, of course I would date him. But like it's not what I necessarily go towards. Yeah. But I find that the guys that I have met like that sometimes are the most insecure. And that kind of brings us full circle to this video. So you did this stitch, duet, whatever it was. And what was the response? And what did you say in the video?
It's been so long. I haven't watched the video in a while, but basically it was just like it is a limiting belief system that you have within yourself that's keeping you from talking to the people that you want to date. When I was in high school, it was junior prom season and I was, you know, really like sad and depressed because I was like, oh, I'm not gonna have a prom date. The girl that I did ask, like very publicly rejected me. And my dad, who kind of looked like Jewish Yoda, again, like 5'4", 100 pounds, tiny little Jewish man, was like, listen, go to the hottest girl in your school, ask her to prom, she'll say yes. And I was like, there's no fucking way. He was like, I will give you $1,000 if she says no.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was like, okay. He never gave me the $1,000. I asked her, she said yes.
Okay.
Right. It was like, because, you know, also there is that like, think of the hottest person that you know. People don't talk to them because they're intimidated by them. Yep. And that's because we're all afraid of some bullshit that we've made up in our head, right? We no matter how many friends you have, no matter how many people that you're close to, at the end of the day, we're human beings. We're desperate for connection. We're desperate for other people that think like us, that make us feel good, that make us feel human. And we're all desperately lonely one way or another. Like even at times when I'm like with my partner and my best friend, I still manage to feel lonely somehow because that's just the way our brains are. We need community, we need people. And when you find people that make you feel good, that make you feel safe, that make you feel happy, that make you laugh, you can really develop attraction to that. And, you know, if there's someone you want to talk to, if there's someone you want to date, the worst thing that can happen is that they say no. And if they say no, no means no, and move the fuck on, get over it. But like, take the shot, take the risk. Again, the worst thing that can happen is that they can say no. It's not high school all over again. No one's going to gossip about it. You're not going to get made fun about it for, you know, days, weeks, months, whatever, because you asked someone in the popular group out when you were one of the anime nerds that wore a fedora in your junior year of high school, right? Like, you don't know until you try, and you've got to take the risk, and you're probably a lot better looking than you think you are. And that brings me full circle to that photo shoot that I did in 2015, where I saw those photos for the first time and was like, that's what I look like to the outside world. That's what I look like through someone else's eyes and not my own. It was genuinely mind-blowing that even though I was 300 pounds and I was this, you know, I had this like perception of myself that it wasn't true. And that I was a lot better looking than I ever thought that I was. I was, you know, and it was basically just a mindset shift that had to happen more so than losing 150 pounds or any one of those things. So that's what it really comes down to, of like, you are worthy of all of the things that you want in your life right now. You don't have to change anything about yourself other than your mindset regarding it. And it is something that is not easy, is so much easier said than done, but can only be done by small, consistent choices that are made constantly. And that's it.
Do you feel like anyone who's watching this and is fat and a male or female, whatnot, can do what you've done in terms of like monetizing this authentic version of yourself that is very also controversial?
At this point, anyone can do anything with anything, you know.
But what do you think made people latch onto your version of this?
I'm really aggressive in the way that I say it. Yeah, I you know, I always lead very I'm always very authentic and genuine, and I don't really keep any secrets about any of the things that I'm talking about. I am very vulnerable about everything that I say, and I genuinely mean all of it. So, people can smell bullshit a mile away. It's the same reason why I could smell the bullshit on Andrew Huberman a mile away, of like, yeah, I don't think so.
You hate these guys, and this was how we connected.
Fucking hate these guys.
I've got this thought process on Joe Rogan in particular. The guys that I know who are like huge Rogan fans, and I don't want to say this and offend anyone, but just the ones that I know in particular, I find to be the most lost.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, because your tweet and even response to me, you are the only guy I think I've ever met who seems to agree on this mindset of mine where like, this infatuation, the same way that people seem to like idolize, which I also can't quite understand, Taylor Swift, these men who like idolize Joe Rogan or whatever the other ones. I mean, I prefer more like philosophical kind of people than I would say these like 5 Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan. Why do you dislike them so much?
Rogan is a fake intellectual who continues to platform white supremacists, Nazis, and just in general terrible people. And people are like, I love the ideas and the conversations. I'm like, there's that show at Rogan's Club in Austin where they have like comedians.
I've seen it.
Yeah,
I used to live in Austin.
Fucking Tucker Carlson was there.
Yeah.
That tells you everything you need to know about who Joe Rogan is. If he's aligning himself with Tucker fucking Carlson, who 100% has, I will stake my whole fucking reputation on. I guarantee you, if you go into Tucker Carlson's closet, you will find KKK robes in it. Fuck Tucker Carlson and all of those people. They are telling you who they fucking are. Joe Rogan is that type of guy who will constantly align himself to power because there is money to be made there. And he is the lowest common denominator type of people who wants to present himself like he's an intellectual free thinker, this or that. But he's just an idiot who's spouting stuff that's getting him more engagement and more views because, quite frankly, YouTube algorithms favor, right-wing bullshit like that. Just internet algorithms in general favor right-wing bullshit like that. And the same thing with Jordan Peterson. He has nothing to say. He has nothing to say except, I hate trans people. That's it. That's all they have. And meanwhile, there are legitimate, incredible people out in the world that actually have really great things to say, that also understand that you can build a platform off of punching up and not minimalizing people and not just actively trying to make the world a shittier place. One of my favorite, like if you're looking, my partner's little brother told us a couple of years ago that he was really into Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. He was working at like a Christmas tree lot for like a seasonal job and, was just like listening to stuff during the day to occupy his mind. And I went up to him and I was like, if you ever want to date a woman, stop listening to that.
Why?
Because it's an immediate red flag.
Why?
Because it's just like you said. It tells you that like.
But I'm the only girl that seems to think this.
You're not the only girl.
You don't think so?
No,
okay.
God no.
Okay.
Because it's the Joe Rogan is the gateway drug to the Milo Yiannopoulos, the Jordan, and all of the like alt-right bullshit, the Andrew Tate, I should make a chart of, how one leads to the other, to the other, to the other, to the other.
Maybe they're all having sex.
I think it might be. But there are so many other alternatives to that just don't have as large of platforms because they actually require introspective thought. Pete Holmes, I think, is one of the most important men in the world, period. Do you know, he's a comedian. He has a podcast called You Made It Weird, and all of the episodes are anywhere from like an hour to 3 hours long.
So Joe Rogan style, because
Joe Rogan style. And the guests vary widely. Like Moshe Kasher is my favorite comedian. He's another person who I think is really important and is a great role model, and also understands, like in their comedy, to only punch up versus punching down. But Pete Holmes grew up in a super evangelical home, and he talks about a lot in his like first couple comedy specials about how, you know, he was terrified to masturbate when he was a child or when he was a teenager because he was absolutely convinced that the rapture was going to happen while he was doing it, and was able to like parse, when he became an adult, was able to parse through that like basically cult upbringing that he was a part of and be able to find himself and redefine his own spirituality, and is really genuinely invested in being a good person and making himself and other people feel good, and is an amazing example for how to be a positive male role model in 2024 and beyond. Whereas Joe Rogan is a lazy, unintelligent grifter who is just doing this to make money and has no interest outside of his how to maintain power and wealth, and doesn't want to try to make the world a better place, doesn't want to try to help any of the people that are listening, and just wants attention.
I would say that the people that I think are so obsessed with them is because at the end of the day, it seems like what he has done, and maybe perhaps it's just because of like the money and the success and knowing his name, and to perhaps a traditional man, that is what the epitome is. Like a hot wife, you have money, you've got a career, and that's it. And so I find that at this point, a lot of people are just lost. Like I would say 90% of society. And that's not a bad thing, but it's a sad thing.
Right.
And so that's why they idolize a Joe Rogan or one of these guys, because they seem to have it all. But you're saying that there are other people out there with smaller platforms that...
Not Joe Rogan, Pete Holmes, You Made It Weird podcast is amazing. Moshe Kasher and his wife, Natasha Leggero, have a podcast called the Endless Honeymoon Podcast, which I really love, where they pretend to be dating counselors. They also have a secrets hotline, which is just unbelievable. I've been on the secrets hotline twice. Challenge for all of your listeners to find which episodes are me. You won't, but it's worth a shot. But they pretend to be relationship counselors, but they give really genuinely wonderful advice, and they'll have other comedians and celebrities on the show. Like, they're really good friends with Chelsea Peretti, so she's been on a bunch of times, and people can call in and they'll give advice and stuff like that, and that's a really great show. He also has another show from pre-COVID era called the Hound Tall Discussion Series, where it's a panel of 3 comedians and one subject matter expert, and anywhere from like the dark history of San Francisco, the Civil War, shooting, NASA. There was a NASA jet propulsion scientist on there who was about to be a Canadian astronaut, talking about the asteroid diversion program. Like, if you can imagine it, they've got an episode about it. And it's a little dated because it's all from like 2015, 16, 17. But they're fucking hilarious. It's one of my go-to like road trip shows. But there are so many other options that are vastly superior that deserve more attention and haven't platformed Tucker Carlson or other eugenicists or other people that are promoting white supremacist talking points. And
I'm going to link some. I'll text you and get the names of some people
I'll
listen to us
send you
after
some
this.
stuff.
Because I would like to put them in the show notes, and for any men who don't want to turn off women and are realizing they may be too Rogan or something obsessed, they probably should find someone else. But following this video that went viral, how did you then kind of move that into building this brand? So that was one video, and then do you remember how many followers I guess you got overnight?
It was like 80,000 overnight.
Oh shit, that's a lot.
It was a lot really fast. It was like every time I looked at my phone, it was another like 10,000. It was one of those things where I was like, oh shit, all the things that I have been talking about that I need to do when I have a larger platform, I've got to do now. And basically it is my North Star has been being the role model that I never had growing up. and who was the person that I needed to show me how to be a man, basically. And, you know, I talk a lot about, I don't like the term toxic masculinity because that doesn't mean anything. I prefer the more like specific and scientific traditional masculine ideology, because men themselves aren't toxic. It is the idea that masculinity and the masculinity that has been, you know, the dominant form of it being pushed onto young boys as being obligatory. That is the major issue. And just the fact of the matter is that there are so many people that exist in the world that are telling you how to live and that are telling you how you have to act and how you have to be and how you have to be perceived. And every single one of us is different, and every single one of us wants different things out of our lives and wants to be able to freely express ourselves, and just make that clear that that is okay, that is acceptable. Whoever you are right now is enough. You're allowed to want to make changes about one thing or another. Mm-hmm. You're allowed to want to strive to be a better person. You're allowed to want to not. But the idea that you can just be this version of yourself and be enough and be good enough and be worthy of love, of happiness, of success, and you know, showing 13-year-old me that like you don't have to just be the funny fat guy to fit in. You can also be the talented guy. You can be the hot guy. You can be the charismatic guy. You can, you know, you don't have to make yourself the butt of the joke. You don't have to continually put yourself into places and social situations where you know you're not wanted, where you know you're the butt of the joke, and you're doing it just because you want to feel like you belong. It really comes down to the, you know, and just like in relationships too, the most important realization that I ever had was that the reason every single relationship in my life was dysfunctional was because my relationship with myself was the most dysfunctional, and that I was absolutely terrified of being alone, and not in the grand scheme of like, oh, I don't want to be alone when I'm 70. Like, it's Tuesday afternoon at 3:00 and I don't want to be alone with my own fucking thoughts, even for a second. And you know, figure like my end goal was to help accelerate the process to help people end their own internal mental suffering in order to give them the tools to put themselves in the places in life that they want to be.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I think the authenticity, even the way who you are when you walked in and who you are now is like the same.
Yeah.
And I don't always find that people can very much be a chameleon, and that's the downside of social media, is that it allows that kind of thing to happen. So do the gigs that you get now, modeling wise, do you think that they're more enticed by you because of your social media following, or no?
No.
Why?
So the grand irony of me being a big and tall model is I'm one of the smaller big and tall models, and like the you know, industry standard for size for big and tall male models is 6'5", 300 pounds, but I'm only 6 feet and 300 pounds. So most of the samples aren't made for me. And also, you know, the dark side of a lot of the weight loss drug stuff is like skinny culture is kind of coming back, and a lot of the progress that was made with more diverse sizes and plus size offerings for men has been walked back severely. So there have been far fewer jobs from a modeling perspective, which has been annoying and unfortunate because, like, you know, I know just through my own research and in the development of what is hopefully going to be a Hot Fat Guy Club fashion line at some point down the road, the fat male consumer and the men's plus size fashion is the single fastest growing vertical within the fashion industry right now. And between 2021 to 2027 is going to be worth like a total of nearly $700 billion.
Wild.
Yeah. And it's nearly impossible to find anything above a 3XL in any major retailer.
Yeah. But at Target you can.
If you're lucky.
Okay. I love Target.
Yeah, I love Target too, but you know, I'm in every Target in the country right now, and I get DMs daily about like, oh, I want to buy the thing that you're wearing, but they don't have my size.
Really?
Oh yeah.
How is it that they hired you as a model, but then they don't even have a size for someone who's
There's a lot of reasons why, and none of them are particularly good. I mean, it's more expensive to make a large, you know, it's a lot more expensive to make a 6XL garment than it is to make a medium, purely from the cost of the fabric, the sample, the fit is wrong because they're just like upsizing the design, the original design from it, you know, and also they claim that you know, oh, we don't have the demand for it. No, the demand is there. It's just that you've alienated that customer for so long that they're not going to buy anything from you because they don't trust you.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
it's unfortunate.
For any brands as well, that's a good thing to know.
We want to give you our money.
Yeah.
We want to give us the opportunity.
And there's a customer
to do
base obviously for it.
Yeah.
So what makes you fearless, Alex?
Oh, I'm good at failing.
But you haven't really failed.
It just looks like that.
Yeah. I agree. I say that all the time. But as long as you're trying, it's all about, as you said, you know, you finally, quote unquote, got that platform. And so I think that's really inspiring. And that's why I was really intrigued by your story, is because it's cool that you wanted it like in an authentic way.
Yeah.
And then it came in such a random kind of moment. And now you were able to capitalize on it. So Alex, where can everyone find you on social media?
My
ETC.
At Hot Fat Guy Club on Instagram and TikTok, hotfatguyclub.com. Sign up for my email list. And then my personal Instagram and TikTok is at Alex Frankel, the Lion Haired.
And I will put all of that in the show notes. Alex, thank you so much.
Thank you,
and
Alexa.
thank you guys as well for listening to another episode of The New Unfiltered. And I will see you back next week for a new episode.